Hello, Warlords. Welcome to Saga Thursday, the show all about the Saga miniatures game by Studio Tomahawk. I'm your host, Rodge. As always, we always have a special guest on. Well, not always, most of the time. But today we definitely do, all the way from New Zealand, John Tailby. And we're going to be talking Undead Legions here. And John is a familiar name. You may have seen him in the comments on the Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. I've seen him everywhere talking about Saga. So it was very cool to finally meet you, good sir. How the heck are you?
Yeah, virtual handshake.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really the current situation. So I should say, we were going to meet at Adepticon. So I think we talked before. You said you were signed up for the Age of Magic, and then you're going to get on the Vikings Age, bringing Normans. And I assume you were going to bring Undead for Age of Magic. Okay. And you were bringing the whole family too?
Yeah. We were going to fly. It's a 16-hour flight direct from New Zealand to Chicago. And we were going to do the convention and then another couple of days in Chicago and then fly back to LA and do the obligatory Universal Studios and Disneyland kind of things on the way back.
That would have been great. Well, hopefully it's still in the cards in the future. Sad times, but all right. Well, we're gonna get into some Saga chat here. So you are in New Zealand there. I think I said that, but if not, so what's your Saga scene like over there?
Saga's quite a popular little game for people here. We've got a small but growing community. Last year we ran quite a few kind of one-day events at our local club meetings, get together a number of different people and pair off and have some games. And we finished up with a kind of like some two-player games. Draw lots to see whether you're red team or blue team, and and then have at it, and that's fun. And
cool.
I think Saga's an easy game to get into. You can buy a couple of boxes of plastic figures and paint up and have a whole new army ready to go in not that long a time.
Yes. Maybe not myself. I'm the slowest painter in the world, but in general, most people can get a force out there relatively quickly. And it's great for getting the new players in. I think Age of Magic, obviously, even the better if you currently own some Warhammer models, perchance. But okay, cool. Well, I'm glad got a good group of guys going over there and getting your Saga on. So the Undead Legions here. So we're going to tackle this as best we can. This is a big endeavor, so that's why I've shied away from them before. But we're going to dig into the faction rules, the special rules, maybe touch on that sacred ground. We'll do the battle board. We're not going to hesitate to discuss the magic spells when we're talking about other things, but we're not going to be delving into the lore of death or the lore of time specifically. We will save that for another video, another time. But as it comes up with the undead, you definitely got a few tips and tricks you're willing to share, I believe. So, okay. So, why don't we jump into the faction here? So, the Warlord here. So like other ones, you can do animal, beast, winged beast. Let's talk about the Necromancer right now. So this is an unusual option that the other warbands don't really have, but you can swap out basically your Warlord for a spellcaster or a sorcerer. Now there's a couple differences. One is he actually is armor 4, so that's a big difference. I believe a sorcerer normally is a 3 in close combat. And so when you're gunning for him, that can be a big difference, as I've found out a few different times. And then he does generate a Saga dice. I don't believe sorcerers normally generate a Saga die, but he does have determination and we obey. So definitely a cool utility piece. So do you like to take the Necromancer? Yeah.
Yep.
Is that what you...
I fairly quickly decided that if I wasn't going to be throwing my general headlong into combat, that having him...
Yeah. It is a viable strategy, I believe, with this board. I mean, that's a route you can take, I feel. But, yeah, if you're not going to do that, you're getting a lot of utility out of the Necromancer because you're getting some spells without, having to spend a point on it. So get yourself another point of warriors, creatures, mindless, what have you. So you can only include a single monster. No big deal there, but it could be anyone. As many creatures as you want. So the Hearth guards can be mounted. If not mounted, they can be on foot with heavy weapons. Always plenty of options in these Age of Magic warbands. The warriors can be bows, but you can't go crazy with the bows. You have to include more units of warriors equipped with bows. You cannot include more units of warriors equipped with bows than units of warriors without bows. So, that's basically when you're putting them down. You could put down a unit of 4 warriors and then 12 bowmen if you want it. That's 1 for 1. Do you take the bow warriors, I guess?
Yep.
Generally?
Yeah.
As many as you can? 50% or...
I will. Okay. So in the army I was bringing to Adepticon, I had 2 units of 10 close combat warriors and a unit of 8 with bow, which is 3.5 points worth of guys. I like having some missile fire in the army. It's a way to put pressure on your opponents early and make them do something, otherwise they stand there and get shot. It's also a way to provide some counter battery fire if the enemy has some missile power of their own. Because you probably want to be fairly careful where you're determining where the battle is going to take place, because ideally you want your units of warriors near your crypt. So you want the fighting you want to stick your crypt in the middle of the table and have the fight go near that for preference. So if you can make the enemy come to you and fight where you want to fight, then I think that's a bonus.
Okay. Well, we got a lot to get through, so why don't we just go down to the crypt? I mean, you're talking about it right now, so can you just describe what's going on? So this is their special terrain piece?
Yep. So the crypt allows you to increase the number of models you get back when you use the Necromancy Saga ability. So typically, you'd get back 2 warriors when you used the necromantic ability. With the crypt, it's 3.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's good. It's a 50% increase
50%, yeah.
In output, and especially if you're not, as you see, not getting rares to really boost that up. So I think that could make a big difference to you. Cool. Well, going back to the units, we have levies, which are actually mindless. So you're basically standard levy or out the window. We got the mindless here. Do not generate a saga die, which is important for a couple different reasons. But they armor 4, annoyingly, and their aggression is 1 for every 5. But you do get 20. How many of these guys do you get at a time? 20 mindless?
20. Yeah, 20 mindless. Yeah.
But you could make a unit of 24. Just keep you on your toes. If you wanted to do 2 points of these guys, you could do 24 and 16. 24, that's a lot of meat.
Yeah, I think when you taking multiple points of mindless and there's a restriction which says you can't spend more points in mindless than you spend on the rest of your warband. Although a warband with 4 points of mindless, I mean, that's like 80 figures. And it's going to be very static because mindless are, I think, difficult to use.
Sure. So let's go into them a little further. So they have the horde ability, so they come in great numbers. They can't close ranks. Then they have a rule called mindless, and they are mindless. They never suffer fatigue, but can only be activated by the Warlord's We Obey rule or the advanced Saga abilities. So we can see that taking 4 points, you're not really going to be moving these guys much. So I think they did say they can maneuver. Was that in a FAQ or not?
I don't remember seeing that. So you're right. Technically they're not. So you'd want these things to be stuck up on the line as the closest point, and then you'd be relying on getting these things shuffling forward and targeting the enemy. Just sucking them in and getting them to bounce off and bringing them back as much as you can, and attritioning the opponent to death with these things.
Sure. So, okay, I did look up the facts. So they can maneuver. So if they're backing off, you'll be able to get a free move with them, basically. And then they did clarify that you can't withdraw mindless to recruit a war machine, lieutenant, or any other kind of unit, because normally you could pull like a half point, but since you get so many, the math doesn't really work out on that the way that it's supposed to. So they've just clarified that. Then the last thing with these guys, it is they have a movement and charge distance of short, so they're not going anywhere quick.
Nope. And you're not really going to get multiple activations out of them per turn, because you need an advanced Saga ability, which there is one, and a Warlord We Obey to move the unit to get it to do 2 things a turn.
Yeah, so they're going to need a chaperone, which very, very well be part of your plan. But okay, well, the last unit is the War Machine, which is a static war machine. So do you use that one?
Yep,
the static.
I was bringing a classic Screaming Skull,
the skull catapult, the little guy.
Yeah. The I don't know, my one's probably 25 years old. Classic GW.
I love that catapult, and I love the crewmen that come with that. The pointer. He's like
Yep. There's a guy with the skull. There's a guy with a bone who looks like he's levering it, and then there's one guy saying, "Chuck it over there, boys." So I took one of my old catapult models and put it on a 60mm round base, and I was gonna throw skulls at people from across the table.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's no reason not to. That's a great model. I love it.
Well, if somebody's gonna leave their sorcerer or an exhausted warlord out there in the open, it's like, here, catch this rock.
Yeah, it's good for plinking. The plinking, that last wound. Absolutely. The monsters, what have you. They definitely come in handy.
Nobody's going to want you to chuck rocks at their expensive unit of mounted Hearth Guard, because you're +1 to hit, so 2 dice needing a 3 to hit. It's gonna you can take one of them off. No?
Plus, if it hurts when you get one of those flyers or mounted guys within 12 inches when you're rolling 4 dice with the +1. I mean, you're gonna do some damage. Okay, cool. So circle back around. The sorcerers can take death and time
Yep.
as those combo with certain abilities. We'll bring that up. The lieutenant we didn't mention yet. So the Black Knight. He has basically the standard kind of hero stats. You can put him on an animal. His special ability, which is awesome, is once per turn, when a friendly hero should suffer a fatigue, you can choose to inflict it on the Black Knight instead of the hero, and the Black Knight cannot use this rule if exhausted. So this is awesome with your Warlord, or your if you do have another sorcerer in there. He can take a fatigue. He has determination, right? So he can just rest it off the next turn, and then it's once per turn. So I would say that's on your turn, and then when it's the opponent's turn, I think you could use it again. So you could. So this is kind of one reason why a mounted Warlord on a beast could be quite awesome, because you're going in, taking fatigues, and you can shunt them over to this guy, both on your turn and then on their turn. So you're definitely a lot more durable that way. And then there's another ability we'll get to that kind of combos with that as well. But
and you're right. So if your Warlord on beast charges in, takes 2 wounds, 1 fatigue, flick him over to the Black Knight, and you're fresh.
Mm-hmm. And then when you're sitting there and they want to come and fight him on their turn, the first one he could shunt over. It's getting.
That's good.
That's good. It's good. I like it. We're in agreement on that, Mr. TB.
In the end, my lieutenant didn't make the final cut of the army. I found him a little bit pillow-fisted, going in fighting by himself.
Yeah, so if you're taking the Necromancer, we could see, he could still be useful. The Necromancer is a little squishier. If they're coming at him, with flyers, it can be pretty hard to stop somebody from fighting your Warlord. You really have to use terrain and units to kind of block things off. So, he still could be useful. But you are right. So, I play the demons mostly, the other world, and their abilities kind of and then so just using him to fight, he's not a fighter. There's nothing you can really do to soup up the demon one, and I think that's probably the same thing here. You're not gonna really just 4 attacks with nothing special.
There is one Saga ability, Vampirism, which will give you 2 extra dice, which makes him, basically use a slightly harder pillow.
4 to 6.
Yeah. Well, best use for him is actually, I was using him on a horse, and you push him forward and sit him in front of somebody and say, "Come at me," and he's still armor 5. They still need to get a whole bunch of hits, and then it takes them 4 unsaved hits to kill.
True.
So you can potentially soak up a quite decent attack from somebody. You might end up exhausted at the end of it, but oh dear, and they're stuck out just in front of you, ready to be hit by one of your hitting pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. So that's kind of when I did use him in the other world. That's kind of what I did, because he is armor 5. I'm taking a lot of flyers and other things, lower armor. I would take him on foot so you could close ranks. So these just can be super hard to do, because going from 4 attacks down to 2, that doesn't matter anyways. So he could be a good roadblock, please, as we'll see. But all right, well, let's jump into the board here. What do you say? Anything else about the units?
That's good.
So up top, it's the same for everybody pretty much. The minions, I think it's just doesn't have that verbiage about the levy or mindless because of their rules. So I'm going to do that. The first rule there, reanimated, This is an activation on any dice. Activate a unit of your choice. And if you use a rare, you can activate up to 3 units, which may not be mindless. So that kind of goes against that. So this is a couple things going on here. So if you are using the mindless, this is your way to get them moving, basically, which is nice. You know, they are levy, but you can use any symbol to get them going. An ability like this is always good if you're taking lots of warriors, because sometimes you lack those commons or rares. You roll nothing but uncommons. So, you know, it happens from time to time. So having an ability like this is good.
You can fix that in Age of Magic, though. You know, you put your dice on the magic thing, and take one of your other dice and go, oh look, it's a rare.
Oh, well, yeah, you can re-roll up to 2 Saga dice. Not too shabby. It's pretty good. So, yeah, and if it is a rare, yeah, activating 3 units is awesome. So, are you usually taking a mindless unit? I don't know that that came up or not.
No.
Yeah,
No,
so
I wasn't a fan of them. The drawbacks. So I just used warriors, and I found warriors to be a pretty effective glue. It's actually inspired me to use more warriors in other armies, where in many of the Age of Vikings type armies, warriors look a bit meh. But yeah, actually having a nice front line of 2 units of combat warriors and a behemoth or a titan, and saying, yeah, okay, come on, that's the front, and then behind is all the creatures and mounted Hearth Guard and things that are just waiting for you to get tired, and then hit you. So yeah, I've used Reanimated. Occasionally I've been lucky enough to have a spare rare, and used 3 different things. But yeah, it's easy. The other thing is it effectively allows you to activate your catapult, for example, for a common.
Oh, good point. Yeah, there we go. That's a great use for it. Okay. Yeah, I played 3 or 4 games against the Undead, so that's the extent of my abilities here. But yeah, I'm kind of torn on the mindless. I don't think they're that great. I think you could definitely use them if you want. I don't think they're bad. But like you said, with the warriors, and we're playing 8 points, the mindless is the thing is they're kind of their bodies. You know, there's so many bodies, but you can get big warrior units, and with 8 points, you can spend 3, 4, 5 points on warriors. You can still get all the tons of bodies without all those drawbacks we talked about. So it's cool to see that this ability is quite handy, even without the mindless about. So good deal. So yeah, I think probably every turn you probably use this. Because the other thing, too, is you're not limiting yourself to a fighter activation or a champion or a minion. You know, these abilities are great because you can see how the battle is unfolding. And, you know, if there's an attack of opportunity that comes up because of some weird fluke of the dice, you can take advantage of it because you have a ability, you know, that you can basically do anything with.
The only unit this can't do is your monster. But yeah, for general, I would stick of all the dice I was putting in the order that I was going to put in the orders section. Take the first common, stick it in there, and then, like you say, apart from the monster, you can use it on anybody. Yeah,
that's a great point. Great clarification. Can never activate the monsters with advanced saga abilities, but yeah, like you said, first dice goes here because why not? All right. Do you want to talk about Necromancy then? Next one down.
Right. Now, we've only got 90 minutes, right? Because Necromancy, probably one of my favorite abilities. Yep. You know, after you put the dice on the reanimation, probably apart from turn 1, Necromancy, you're always going to be using this. if you're using warriors or mindless and you're shoving them into the enemy's face, then you're going to want to have necromancy bringing them back. And because you bring them back, you're not giving up massacre points, or you're increasing your own survival points.
Yes. So this is the reason you want to play Undead. You know, this is why people play Undead, because they want to bring their guys back. So this is the ability to do it. So one of two abilities. So there is another one, but I think this is the bread and butter because it uses any Saga dice.
Yep.
And I have to say, just using it normally, it's not too bad. You know, I'm thinking about warriors, just 2, but using that rare up to 4 warriors, and then if you make it 5 with that crypt, that hurts. That makes me a sad little puppy for sure. So is this where your rare is going generally, or
yeah, it's probably number 2 on the rare on the rare charts.
The hierarchy of rare needs.
Yeah. I find with this battle board, I rarely have enough rares to stick them in the stick one in the reroll 2 Saga dice pool to get extra Saga dice, because there's too many juicy things that are rares on this board. So I would say, if you can get a rare on here and pull back five warriors that the enemy's just spent last turn killing, your unit goes from combat ineffective to full strength in one go.
Yeah, that's huge. So like you said, the last ability had a rare bonus. There's at least 2 other rare abilities, 2 abilities that get better using a rares. So a lot of competition for that rare dice around here. So okay, well, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts about where that rare dice is going to go further down. But so this is the first ability that is pushing you towards the warriors as a choice. So the way they built this board, they kind of pushing you towards like a horde, essentially. You know, the masses are coming your way, which is themey. I mean, there are certain abilities that work with other troop types that they specifically included, but so the bread and butter, the resurrection ability, basically exclusively is warriors and mindless. So if you want to use it, you are going to be taking those guys. Okay, well, I'm going to pop down to Litanies of the Dead. This is a common and uncommon activation ability. So 2 dice, but you do get to activate up to 4 units of warriors to move. So no charging or shooting, which is good.
Yep.
Or you could activate up to 2 units of mindless if you are a madman, crazy enough to take two units of those guys. If you did take 1 unit, you still could use this ability if you needed to get another activation, because it says up to 2 units, so it's not activate 2 units. As the fact clarified, in certain situations you need a specific number. So you could use 2 dice to activate your mindless. So you could get a triple activation out of them with We Obey, Reanimated, and Litanies of the Dead. It'd take you 3 dice, but you could get them a whopping 12 inches across the board on a single turn if necessary. Add a maneuver in there at the start, 16. Not too shabby, John.
That's you're really starting to cook with gas there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, seems like a good ability. If you are taking the 4 unit, I mean, so you could activate 2 units with 2 dice normally, so you're not getting a bang for your buck there. Activating 3 units for 2 dice, that's okay. But if you do have the 4, that's pretty darn good. So you talked about 2 units of 10 warriors and then a unit of 8 bowmen. Was there more warriors, or was that it?
No, that's what I was planning to bring, and yes, I have used this ability to do exactly that. You take each of the 2 combat skellies and push them forward, and then have the missile troops shoot a target, or because it's you can't do a combo activation and charge people because that's not allowed, which is slightly unfortunate. But
yeah,
I'm probably gonna, as we'll see in a minute, I'm probably gonna not necessarily be too aggressive with the warriors first off. I'd use them as kind of counterpunch units because they can soak up an awful lot of potential hurting from the take a good big charge from one of the enemy's power hitter units and watch them bounce off, and then a couple of activations later and you're back to untouched, and then you charge in when they're at a disadvantage and you're fresh.
Okay, so interesting. So the warriors are like a second wave for you? Is that?
No, the warriors are up on the front line going, I'm going to push them forward into your face, going, you have to deal with me. And they charge you, and you go, right, I'm not going to take any damage from this attack, and my turn.
Yes.
My turn. Now I'm all fresh, and I've got any casualties you did back. Now I'm going to attack you.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Yeah, so there's an ability we'll get into that is quite amazing, but just part of the undead life, as they say. So, yeah, great ability. And then it is a way to sort of activate your warriors with an uncommon, because normally warriors cannot be activated with an uncommon. So, cool. Well, do you want to talk about Tide of Reanimation?
So, Tide of Reanimation is the other Saga ability that allows you to bring back warriors and mindless, where Necromancy gives you multiple models back in one unit. This gives you one model back in every unit. So again, you're encouraged to take multiple units of warriors and maybe a unit of mindless in your army. So that's good. I don't find myself using this as often as I use Necromancy because it's fairly easy to get dice starved in this, especially when you've got 8 points of guys and only a maximum of 8 Saga dice. You're not going to be activating everybody, and some of my battles, some of my units have kind of sat there and just kind of looked at their enemy sitting there 12 inches away across the table.
Sure.
The battle's not going there because you just don't have dice to do everything that you'd want to do. But this is a nice one that you can use to just refill the ranks. And again, you can do it, and a unit that's been necromancied can have a bonus guy back as well.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, a couple good points there. So, yeah, if a unit hasn't taken any damage yet, they're not going to get any bonus from this. So this seems kind of more of a late game play. If you don't only have one unit of guys left, it's only going to bring one guy back. It doesn't combo with the Crypt, because that specifically says the Necromancy Saga ability. So, yeah, your mileage is going to vary greatly. And we said this is a rare, so there's other rares out there. The other thing is the Order's reaction ability. So the timing of this, it's not going to be on your turn. It's going to be at the start of their turn. So, does it matter at that point? I don't know. There could be some issues there of when the benefits come to play. So, Yeah, not your first choice, but if your opponent is not concentrating their attacks on a single warrior unit, which if they're doing that, you got to be pretty happy. Must be their first time playing against the undead, really. Then this one would be pretty nice. Yeah, generate a couple models across the board, really demoralize them before the game continues further. So, okay, cool. All right ability, probably not your first choice. I'm going to do All Is Dust. This one is it's a bane of my existence here a little bit. But so uncommon, it's an activation. Eliminate up to 3 figures from one of your units to remove one of the unit's fatigues for each figure eliminated. So eliminating 3 figures. So first off, you'd think we go with the mindless, but we got to remember those guys aren't even getting fatigued to begin with. And since you're killing your own guys, you really don't want it to be Hearth Guard. So really, we're going back to a warrior boon here for the most part. So this one's great for going in there, doing some fighting, getting back up to strength. If you have some bow warriors, I've been a victim of some multiple shooting attacks, and then clearing the fatigues off with All Is Dust here, and then using Necromancy right after that to bring them right back. So that's a little obvious combo there. Just letting everybody know ahead of time going in that's a possibility. So
I can't possibly think how you could end up being exhausted after fighting. That you would need to then get rid of all 3 fatigues and then get back to full strength anyway. I mean, it makes those poor fleshy mortals one rest action per turn really suffer, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's a great point because in Age of Magic, everybody really is immortal. Not immortal, just mortal, because there aren't really many ways to get rid of fatigue out there as compared to other ages of Saga. The spells obviously provide some outs, but for the most part, this is a pretty unique ability in the Age of Magic, being able to slough off these fatigues. So, any particular tricks with this one? Will you do the shoot 3 times? Have you? I don't know, because you can shoot 3 times and nothing like has happened to the enemy because they made all their saves. So you're. I don't know.
There is that. One of my friends, Alan, he plays a Horde army, and the Horde have an ability as a reaction that says they now count as in cover when you shoot at them. So they're saving their stuff on 3s.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, great. Well, that's one Saga dice I'm not getting back. I haven't done the sort of twang multiple times at people with bows thing.
Okay, not your thing. That's fine.
It hasn't been where I've put my dice, and I've usually got other things I probably want to spend my points on. But yes, I have ended up with one of my big combat warrior units exhausted after being attacked, and a quick All Is Dust and a Necromancy next to the Crypt, and you're back to full strength and ready to counterattack.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So, and we keep talking about sloughing off the full 3, those situations, but you can absolutely use it just to get rid of 1. Before.
Not worth it. Not worth it if it's 1, because you're better off resting.
That's a good point. So, depending on the timing of things, you would want to do it. But so an uncommon die to get rid of 1, not necessarily, you're saying, but 2? Are we looking good at 2?
Yeah. and you're right. If you are doing a sustained attack with one of your units of warriors, and you're going to go back in for another go, ditching one guy to get rid of a fatigue, so that your opponent can't make themselves harder to hit, is quite worth having. So yeah, I can see it being used then, but generally I've used it for cleaning off exhaustion and standing back up and going, all right, now it's my turn.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the obvious bang for the buck there, but you do got a little utility there. Can use it in different ways. So do you end up using this one frequently, would you say?
Yep.
Or, yeah?
Yep.
One of the, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Because you're quite likely to get, the way I've been playing, where I've been using this warrior blocks as a tar pit and pushing them up and saying, come and attack me, I can quite easily find myself exhausted after a combat, and then at the end of the turn, you or at the start of your turn, you go, right, you three go and have a quick lie down, get rid of those fatigue, here they come back up again, right, now let's start the turn, I'm not exhausted, you are, boom.
Let's do it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Do you want to do the Howling Pack? This is a interesting ability here.
Yep. So this is one of the few abilities, and I think it's the only ability that warriors can, or mindless can use to get bonus attack dice. Aside from giving them kind of 1-for-1 in the combat pool. I have used this, and it's one of the reasons that my combat warrior units start at 10, because it potentially gives me an advantage over smaller units, and it means that one of your units can go and rough up the enemy warlord, because 10 of your guys, they've got presence, so they count as 4. That would give you 6 extra dice.
Yeah,
and that's quite good. The downside is you only cancel hits on a 6, but you're a skeleton, so who cares, right? You're going to be back. Yeah, well, and you know the Necromancer is away. So yeah, I've used this. You know, going and attacking somebody's warrior unit. If they have 8 warriors, maybe you kill one with your shooting warriors on the way in. Pop this, 3 bonus attack dice. You know, that's worth having.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's definitely a good ability, and like you said, 6 attack dice. And that's actually a lot in the Age of Magic. You know, all things considered. Yeah. You know, 2 to 4 is probably more typical. So yeah, this ability is interesting for sure. So it is just warriors and mindless again. So this is like the 4th or 5th ability pushing you in that direction. I was like, all right, we get it, Alex. All right, we're going to take warriors.
Well, there's it's funny because the battle boards split almost into 2 parts: abilities that favor warriors and levy, and abilities that favor creatures and Hearthguard.
So yeah, and we're about to get into those, but so one thing to remember, like you said, the Warlord has presence. The creatures, monsters do have presence. So if you're getting really excited and you're thinking it's going to be 12 to 1, and you're going to get 11 extra attacks, maybe not. You know, you have to deal with 8. This one is interesting because if they know that you have it, so I've been through this thought process on whether to close ranks or not, because if I close ranks, then the downside you're not really taking, because I'm not going to do that many hits, where if I keep my full attacks, I know that all my hits are pretty much going to go through. Sometimes you can get lucky on 5s, you know, so 5 pluses, you can just make a bunch of them, but so you're saving on a 6 essentially, for the
Yeah.
most part. I guess there's no, you could be in hard ground or so it could be a 5 potentially in certain situations. I guess that hasn't come up, but if it's just 6s, all your hits are going to kill them. So I've actually, if I think they're going to use this, I've not closed ranks specifically because I just want to kill more skellies when I have the opportunity to. So it kind of adds.
Then I might not, right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
This triggers later than closing ranks.
Exactly. So they have to kind of commit one way or the other. So you might, if they do close ranks, you're going to use it. If not, so it kind of has a few different mind games layers of the onion going on there. So
that bluff and counter bluff, eh? Who's gonna use what Saga ability?
Yeah. So we got that going on for sure. Okay. Now I'm gonna talk about Vampirism.
Yep.
So this is a very cool ability. Whenever I look at this board, my eye is drawn to it. I like the fighty warlord, so this is my bread and butter. This is a uncommon or a rare for heroes, hearthguards, or creatures. And it's a melee. Gain 2 attack dice, which is fine. Also, if you inflict at least 1 casualty during this melee, or the enemy cancels a casualty with resilience, remove a fatigue from your unit after the melee is resolved, or up to 2 if you use the rare. So, and that's awesome that they included that specific language about the casualty and the resilience thing there. They avoided a lot of arguments on the game table and made the ability much more useful, because generally you're in charge of this, so you're going to be getting a wound through. So that's awesome. So basically, you can fight a melee and not have that fatigue afterwards. If you are a creature or a hero, that fatigue is also your lifeblood, so you're a little further away from death. The 2 fatigues thing is awesome because with the creature or the warlord, generally you will be taking a couple hits, so you'll probably have 2 or more fatigues for sure. And you could combo that with the Black Knight, be a 3rd fatigue, so you could go in, take damage, especially if you're resilience 2 on the warlord. I keep talking about the warlord. You could go into some Hearthguard, do a lot of damage, take a lot of damage, but come out of it basically unscathed.
And ready to go for a second round.
Absolutely. So obviously, it'd be good with that warlord on the beast. This is going to be a good ability for you. So how do you use this when you're running the Necromancer? So he's not going to be fighting. I think you mentioned some mounted Hearthguards. Do you use the creatures with these guys?
Yep.
Too?
Yep. So in the army I was bringing, I had a unit of 6 mounted Hearthguard, and I had a unit of 3 quadruped creatures. So they would sit back behind my front line, which consists of my 2 big units of combat warriors and my Titan.
Mm-hmm.
And once you've bounced off those, then these things would rattle in and hit you. And 15 attack dice from a quadruped creature unit will wake you up quite quickly.
Yeah, and it is good with the creatures too. We know they do the damage, but they're a little fragile. So anything you can do to keep them alive is a bonus for sure. So
well, you can take a kind of soft looking creature unit, and with Vampirism and Masters of the Tombs, which we'll get to, you can make them quite tough, and even flying creatures suddenly become quite tough, and the ability to charge somebody and be able to retreat back behind your warrior units after the raid is quite useful.
Okay, cool. Yeah, those big I hate there's three creatures when they're fatigued or they have three fatigue, you know, and you don't have a war machine or anything else, and you have to put a unit in and eat the 15 attacks. I just hate that so much.
Yep.
So
Yep.
having some shooters is always good, and
Yep.
this ability keeps them alive. All right. Well, I'm going to let you get into Cursed because this is a very interesting ability. And we haven't talked about magic too much, but I think you will have a little something in mind for this one here. So why don't we get to it?
Okay. So Cursed, this ability, you trigger it during your opponent's orders phase. So you can see them put down their dice. Right? So they put their dice down on their battle board. You can see what it is they're doing. And then you get to pick 2 units. And if either of those units suffers a fatigue, the other unit does as well. So in the early game, if they've got a unit of missile-armed levy, you pick that unit. And then you pick their big combat block of, say, 8 Hearthguard.
Mm-hmm.
And if they move up with their levy and they're going to move up and then shoot, then the levy take a fatigue at the end of their shooting action, and then the Hearthguard take a fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
So that stops them doing that whole, I'm going to shoot you 3 times with my levy, because the levy are going to end up exhausted and the Hearthguard unit end up exhausted as well.
Yeah, a little insurance policy, not too shabby.
Well, and depending upon how you can predict which units they want to actually use by the way they've put their orders dice down.
Correct. So, for the most part, the boards in Saga Age of Magic, the one I'm thinking of, Great Kingdoms is the one that can kind of not necessarily commit to anything, but for the most part, the other boards are generally locked in, and you can see, well, they're going Hearthguard this turn, or they're going to use the warriors, or looks like he's getting the monster ready. And speaking of the monsters, so it's especially brutal if you choose those guys, because you're actually the creatures or the monsters or warlord. You know, that's their life that you're inflicting upon them.
You can say, okay, your the unit that you're going to come fight me with, your Hearthguard. Great, I'm going to curse them and I'm going to curse your monster. Right, and it doesn't matter whether it's Resilience 1 or Resilience 2, it's take a fatigue. So their monster can end up exhausted at the start of your turn. Yeah. Right? And that's fantastic, because you don't have to really do anything to kill it.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing. It's good.
And where I found this combos really nicely and has really annoyed some of my opponents, which tells me I must be doing something right, is there's one of the death spells which your Necromancer or your Sorcerer can take called Nightmares. Yeah. That's 2 magic dice to cast, and if you get it on the optimum, and kind of that's like about a 75% chance of getting it, you roll a dice, and at the start of their activation, on a 3+, they take fatigue. So if that's one of the units you've cursed, like you curse their levy unit, and now they go to activate it, 3+, it takes a fatigue, and the unit of Hearthguard Knights or their Warlord takes a fatigue as well. So you can paralyze 2 of their units and take them off the board, or you exhaust them, or get them on a number of fatigues, which then makes them much softer when you plow into them with your creatures or your own Hearthguard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's a great ability there. So if you don't use Nightmares, they still have a limited ability to move and do something. But with Nightmares, basically they could be penalized on that first activation. And, depending what's going on, generally you probably do want to tag their monster or Warlord or something like that. They really don't want to take the chance. So, and if you do the highest level, it's on a 2+, and if they roll a 6, they immediately become exhausted, and then the activation is canceled. So that's funny.
Well, I played Thomas, and he had a unit of Hearthguard Knights, and I cast this on him in the turn after he'd attacked me, and he goes, okay, I'm going to activate them to move, and he was already on 2 fatigues. He rolls a 3, goes to exhausted, he can't do anything.
He's done. Yeah,
he's done. It's like, well, and you've tried to, and you've activated them, so you can't now rest. So you're now stuck there, exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And my Black Knights ate them next turn. Yeah, because you go in, they're -1 to hit you anyway. You spend their fatigue to make them 2s to hit, and you 6s, so they can't actually hit you back, and you just clean them off.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't really a contest.
So is this where your rare is typically going? Yep. Right here.
Yep. This is my number 1 choice for a rare.
Okay. Yeah. Great ability. I will point out, like we said, it is an orders reaction. So only saying that because in 3 of the 4 games, the undead player tried to use it on their turn, which would be like super amazing if you could use it on your turn and go in and fight people and bounce the fatigue around. They get so excited about that possibility, which isn't really a possibility, that it is the orders reaction. So the opponent is always on the driver's seat and are going to decide what they are willing to take. But if they don't move, that's a win. Like we said, in and of itself. So
and potentially they have wasted their dice, because if they've like you say, if they've stacked up 3 dice in the monster pool, and you say, okay, here's the monster coming, right, curse the monster, curse somebody else they consider important, who you can also see they were going to use because they put dice there, and it's like, well, you're only going to get to use one of these 2 things.
Yeah. And that's a good point about the monsters and the creatures, or Warlord on the bees. I mean, they fight. If they were going to fight once, they were probably going to max out their fatigues, which they're going to max out a second unit.
Yep.
So, anyways.
And nothing warms the cockles of an ancient lich's heart than seeing exhausted mortals standing in front of their combat units, right?
Absolutely. Okay, cursed. And it is an ability that has an exclamation point on it, which I love it. Well, actually, is it a exclamation point or a tiny sword?
Looks like a tiny sword in the book here.
Okay. I'm going to look in the... this is important. We got to know if it's an exclamation point or not.
Yeah.
Clarification.
I think that's a warning that this is incredibly annoying and should be
must
used with
be.
care if you want to play these people again.
Yeah, that's cool. Whatever font this is, I want it. I want a tiny sword for an exclamation point. So I'm going to get into the next one. Already Dead. Yep. This is a common ability, melee warriors only. Once again, looks like there's an exclamation point on this one as well. We're already dead. So your unit gains resilience 4, which is awesome. So if you're going in fresh, you can absorb 12 hits, but you cannot roll attack dice or defense dice. So that can be important as well. So you're not if you're going in fresh, you're taking 12 hits, it's probably not going to come up. But if you're only really blocking 4 or 8 hits, depending on the attacks, it comes up. So basically every hit they do will become a wound, which becomes absorbed. So it's kind of a weird little nuance, but yeah, so this one you could take those 3 fatigues, absorb a full round of attacks from the biggest baddie that there's ever been, and
Yep.
then all is dust maybe at some point, and just bring them back, make them fresh.
I can neither confirm nor deny that I have done that combo.
Yeah, so
More than once, I can neither confirm nor deny that I've done that.
so that's like an
'Cause
active turn ability. To do all is dust right after, it has to be your active turn. So then you're
Yeah.
like, so what is the circumstances that you're foregoing all your attack dice to fight a melee? I don't know. Do you have I can think of an example, but I would like you to tell me.
Okay. Their 15 attack creature unit rolls into one of your unit of warriors, and it's gonna get about 7 or 8 hits, and you go, okay, all is dust, drop that down, and you take probably 3 fatigues, because if you only take 2 fatigues, you'll take a third one for having fought in a round of melee.
For the fight,
so
yeah.
you're going to end up exhausted. But then they've possibly spent dice moving into position, dice charging, their unit takes a fatigue. They may have tried to buff their unit up, because you can do this whenever you're playing a Saga ability. So they might go in, they go first, they put some extra dice down, and they load up their battle board in one big, for a big hitting attack that should normally take you off the board, and you go, okay, I'm dead. Turns that into 3 fatigue, and then next turn, you all is dust and necromancy, you're back to full effectiveness, and they've got a tired unit with an empty battle board.
Yeah. So, I mean, you laid it out, basically, how it's going to happen. So you get to see what's going to happen. You get to decide whether you're going to use it or not.
Yep.
So this is ability similar to Doppelgangers for the other world, where it's going to shut down one combat. So the weakness is they have to be able, if they can fight again, they can still kind of get you, but depending what's going on, maybe you wouldn't use it then. Maybe you would just fight instead, and save it for something else. So you're kind of in the driver's seat, but it kind of forces them to allocate dice to do a multiple attack, which maybe they can or can't. So kind of like if we're in historicals, the Scots can always repulse one attack, so you have to do multiples. So you're kind of winning that way, just because they're having to use dice for activations, and you just have a little old common here, just minding its own business, just waiting to be used.
Oh yeah, this gets used quite a lot, and if they're coming in for a second go, you can still always make the decision to close ranks if you're being charged by something that's a big hitter, right? You say, okay, I'm closing ranks, and if they then go, okay, and stack up a whole bunch of extra dice and things like this, you go, okay, all is dead. And if you had any fatigues on you, like 1 fatigue or something like that, do they then make the decision to spend that fatigue, giving you 4 more hits to absorb, or do they leave it?
Exactly. So that's another place, the mind game, the Saga mind games. Go in, do some damage with your warriors, come out with a fatigue or 2, and then you've got this, and then all of a sudden that unit isn't necessarily as vulnerable as it seems. So I think that's a good way to think about it. All right, well, I think we've had a good discussion there, so I'm going to let you hit the last one here. I'll give you the honors for Masters of the Tombs.
Right, so this is an ability that is useful for creatures and Hearthguard, and you can use it in melee or when you're shot at. And this is another one where the sequencing of when you play this is important, because it adjusts your armor from whatever it is currently to 5.
Exactly.
So if you have charged in with somebody and the opponent has spent your fatigue to lower your armor down to 2, you can get maximum bang for the buck by putting this down, and then you're back to armor 5. And
yeah, that's good.
You know, that's the best you can get from it. If you are lucky enough to have a spare rare to put down here, you can get 3 additional defense dice as well, which is always worth having. And
not too shabby, yeah.
No, not too shabby. And it's good for your units of quadruped creatures and your mounted Hearthguard units especially, who might be more vulnerable. I mean, quadruped creatures are down to a 3 if they're shot at.
Yeah.
So you get a minimum, popping this, you get a minimum of 2 points of armor back, which is, well worth having.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you pop that rare on a shooting attack, like that's pretty safe. If they just have the one shot, which sometimes you can see that it's just the one shot, like you could definitely weather that. Yeah, this one's cool. I think it's kind of pushing me towards the Hearth Guard, because those guys get some fatigue, and then all of a sudden they're down to armor 3 and they just get wiped out in one big attack. But just having this ability kind of keeps them alive that way. They're not gonna they don't want to use the fatigue, waste it. So they might probably just leave it on, and so you might not get to use it actually, but you're kind of fine with that. That's cool. Use just leave the fatigue on or take their armor up, but either way it makes them a lot more survivable. And then definitely the creatures, they'll be able to use it every time. They start at a 4 in the melee. So okay, cool. So it sounds like you take a little bit of everything in your list there. Yep. The Necromancer, we've got you mentioned the Titan a few times now. They're really, I think this is a board that does not have any hidden little orders or orders reactions that can soup up a monster, which some of the boards do, but doesn't look like these guys do. So you like to take one regardless, the Titan armor 5?
Yeah. It's again, it's a bit slow. It's but it's tough, and as long as you stay away from paladins.
Yeah.
My Titan got Boromired in one game, and got eaten in one round by a paladin. So I learned that one the hard way. But in general, having him up on the front line saying you have to deal with me, because he still hits reasonably hard with 12 dice.
Oh yeah.
And you can't let it ponderously roll forward to your line. So, a dice to shuffle him forward every turn, or he's quite good for your soft and squishy Necromancer to shelter behind.
Sure, yeah. His base is smaller. You can get behind there. The Wheel Bay is a good choice if he's not hanging out by the Skull Chucker. Having him behind the Titan is a good ploy as well.
Well, you got to have a, if you forgive the NFL analogy, right? This is the guy who's your best placed guy in your offensive line to protect your quarterback, right?
Sure, like the center, right in the center of the line, doing everything.
And yep.
Okay.
So I had an Undead Titan guy made out of a mix of GW bits and Immerse Miniatures resin body, So he was ready to come and tread on a few people.
Sure, nice. That's awesome. So we're not going to get into spells like we said, but I think we can say what is your go-to, your 3 spells you got written down on your roster. So I think one of them was Nightmares for sure.
Yep.
So what are the other 2 that you take generally?
So the other one that I quite like is Precognition from Law of Time.
Okay.
So Precognition allows you to re-roll defense dice, and at a basic level, it's re-rolling defense dice on a one that's called 1 or 2,
1s and 2s,
and
yeah. Wow,
on the moderate level, it's everything. And if you're super crazy enough to try using the total power level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I was playing my first game with my Lord of the Wild army, and I used total power and probably blew my sorcerer up.
Nice. Get it out of the way.
Loss of control too. And when your Necromancer is also your general, I'm just not taking that risk.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sometimes you can risk a sorcerer to get something off, but he's a Saga dice and a wheel bay on top of that. That's a good point about playing it more cautious. So
I would either the battle is already won, or in which case I don't need to do it, or the battle's already lost, and this play will allow me to claw it back. But if he dies, I'm giving up a whole bunch of points either way. So you're looking at it going, well, I really need to knock over this monster or whatever it is that I need to get the points from. And then the third choice of spell is the kind of ones I've rotated around a bit. And in the end, I was going with aging.
Okay. This kind of works with curse, right? Right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking there? All right.
Yeah. Yep. So you age one unit and nightmares the other unit and curse the pair of them so that they cross. Whichever one does anything takes a fatigue and the other one gets one as well. The drawback with this one is it's only got a range of L, where Nightmares is unlimited range, but the bonus is it only costs you 1 dice.
Sure. So it's a unit with an L. During the next turn, they suffer an additional fatigue after every melee. At the optimal level, any move or charge activation, if you want to go nuts, after any activation. And they also suffer an additional fatigue at the end of the turn, just to boot. So, cool. Yeah, I could definitely see that working well with Cursed. May the rares flow in that situation.
I have had one. I have done it once or twice where I have chucked multiple dice into the magic pool and had like a 6 dice magic phase. And chuck spells left, right, and center. And my warlord's running around, getting into position to cast a spell on this unit, and then we obey them, and then they need line of sight to that unit to give them the nightmares, and over there. The other one I quite like, which I tossed up about, but in the end I went with aging, is what's it called? From the Lord of Time, Crumble, I think it's called.
There's one called Decay. Is that a fatigue on a...
No. Sorry, Erosion.
Okay.
So, Erosion. Choose a small area of uneven terrain in the sorcerer's line of sight. Terrain counts as low and open until either start of your next turn at the low level or the end of the turn. Now, that's fantastic for if somebody's stuck their war machine in a swamp or something like that, you go, right, now it's firm ground, charge.
Yeah, and you said you take mounted Hearthguard and the
Yeah.
quadrupeds. So
I wouldn't want to be sending my mounted Hearthguards into a swamp, but if I can drain the swamp and get your vulnerable unit like your sorcerer or your war machine or something sitting out there on dry land, it's that. Now, I don't know how many Call of the Wild players were probably coming to that, but
it's just
their ability to animate a hill and hit you with it, it could be quite happily countered by erosion,
and
where you go, that's a field, that's not a hill, and Call of the Wild have a few abilities which
shoot out of it, so you could do the same thing.
Yeah, you're not shooting me from that woods because it's not a woods, and
that's actually quite really good with the quadrupeds and the mounted Hearthguard, because it's very difficult to defend against that when it can come from any uneven terrain. You kind of have to put units into wood. It can be very onerous to defend against that. But okay, this is great. Yeah, I've never had access to these spells, so I haven't looked at them too closely. But that's cool. Yeah, great ability.
What do demons get? Demons get death and
energy.
Oh yeah.
So I kind of when I play, I pick them all from death. I rate the energy spells pretty low, in my opinion. But it's a topic for another video at some point. So wow, cool. So what do you have success against the Age of Magic boards, and what do you have trouble against, would you say?
I've
was it all smooth sailing?
No. It's my friend Thomas brought a Great Kingdoms army made up of his Lord of the Rings. So he didn't bother with any of that fancy magic or creatures or monsters, and he just took a horde of Knights of Dol Amroth and Men of Gondor and a unit of Rangers.
Yeah.
And he cleaned my clock. Right.
Yeah.
My Black Knights were going to charge his bow levy, who were guarding his sacred tree, and he went, oh yeah, in this, but nah, you know what's coming, don't you?
Yeah.
He says, in this battle board, I can overwatch you. And I went, you what? And it's like, not even you're hitting you on sixes. So yeah, I think I lost 2 knights to the shoot reaction, and he stabbed another knight, and like the 2 survivors are going, can we just get out of here, please? This is not good. So there was, I
could see that.
That was like it. And that was like his first game, and Thomas is not he's an experienced wargamer, so he's a good player overall. But he just turned up and said, "I don't need to take anything tricksy or whatever. I'm just going to do powerful hitting units and do that very well." And I was just overrun.
Yeah, I think the Great Kingdoms are a great all-around faction for sure. So I think everybody will have a tough time against them, including the other Great Kingdoms players. Is there any of the other factions that you tend to steamroll?
I'm not sure that for me. It's not the factions; it's the people you're playing.
Sure.
Right? Most of my gaming group, we're all kind of long experienced wargamers, so you're not going to get many people playing the mistakes. I mean, I've played 2 games against Al's Goblin Hordes, and the first game I beat him, and then in the second game he beat me. And those hordes, when they can go and get things lined up in the right order, it's like my general charges you, and he's within range of his own sacred stone, and he's in range of the metal spell, so he's getting all these bonus dice just before he starts, and then he charges, so everybody else thinks charging is a fantastic idea, and then 4 goblin berserkers turn up from somewhere and just obliterate whatever they touch. It's you're going, oh, okay, you warrior units holding the little scanners that are going bleep bleep bleep, and you go, multiple trolls closing on my position. Yeah. No.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. For the most part, it seems pretty balanced for you. So I have heard the internet grumbles about the power of the undead as far as their regenerative abilities, giving them an edge over the other factions. I personally haven't really felt that or run into that. I don't subscribe to that, but I only have 4 games against the undead, so I haven't played against their full might, so I can't speak to that. Do you have an opinion on that? Is it too strong? The regeneration, it's pretty reasonable, I think. I mean, in my opinion, but what are your thoughts?
It's the classic thing that undead factions it's the classic fantasy trope, right? Undead factions just about in any rule set have this kind of ability, and the classic answer has always been focus yourself on one unit and put it down.
Exactly.
Can't necromancy a unit that's been wiped out. Faffing about doing one attack over here, one attack over there, one attack, a bit of damage there. Nah, that's that kind of attritional stuff that might work against some other armies. Maybe that's effective against demons where the units aren't necessarily that big, or they're all fragile because they fly or whatever.
Sure.
But nah, against undead, you pick one target and you pound the unit until it is gone. Exactly. And if you line up 3 of your units and you shoot your way in, and then you do 2 close combat attacks at it to put it down, you put it down and it doesn't get back up.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at what the undead are paying, right? They've got almost no abilities to get bonus attack dice. I can't even chuck spare saga dice into a combat pool like I can in Age of Vikings. Before I really got into the rules, I thought a catapult's going to be awesome because I'll be able to chuck dice into a combat pool.
Yeah.
And in turn 1, I'm going to open fire on your sorcerer from anywhere, and you can have a 4 dice attack hitting you on 2s to the face. That's but you can't do that because there's no combat pool. So I've got very limited ways of getting bonus dice. I have made my opponents kill maybe 10 extra skeletons a game, but that's what undead do. If they didn't do that, you'd be kind of disappointed because the faction wouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So you laid it out perfectly. Going against these guys, the counter strategy is to, if you're going to go against the warrior units, wipe them out. I mean, you don't have to fight the warrior units. I mean, the Hearth Guard aren't getting back up. The creatures, if you're taking the Necromancer Warlord, it's very vulnerable if you have some flyers. So that just gives you a reason to include some flyers if you can, like you said. And same thing with the mindless. You don't have to. If you engage those guys, like you're doing something wrong, because you shouldn't be trying to kill those guys. So I think you laid it out pretty well here. We've been talking for quite some time, so unfortunately we will not be addressing the legendary units or the legendary war bands, because we could talk at those for quite some time. Perhaps another point. Have you played any of those? Just real quick. No. Yeah. We haven't.
No, I haven't. I haven't for the undead faction. Alan's used units of berserkers, which are the horde the Horde unit.
Okay, yeah.
And I quite fancy taking my Templars and using them as the military orders variant legendary faction as a Great Kingdom.
They get like the fanatics, right?
Yeah.
So they're kind of like
go.
little mini berserkers. Yeah, those guys are awesome.
Yep. The order militant, and I've got knights, and I've may or may not bother with a wizard, depending upon what Domain of Light does, and yeah, I can fill up 2 extra points on top of my normal Saga army with two units of Zealous Fanatics.
Yeah.
And Fireforge Games do a nice plastic box of armed peasants.
Those will be perfect. Yeah.
Those would be perfect. Yeah. Yeah. And there's your 8-point army, and it's still going to be pretty hard hitting and
definitely
that kind of thing.
So yeah, we haven't really tangled with those much in the first run. We had basically after the book came out, we played the summer, did a ton of games, but we've never really used them. So I think we're getting like a second wind here for Age of Magic. Yep. So I'm thinking we're just gonna let it rip and give some of those other war bands and the units a shot. Looks pretty fun. And then if something is a little strong, perhaps you are playing 8 points of Saga versus 6, so you can kind of absorb that unbalance, I think, a little bit more as compared to using legendary heroes or something in the historical 6-point games. Can be a little unbalancing. But okay, cool. Well, thank you, John, for coming on, man. This has been awesome.
Oh, thank you for having me.
The quality here is amazing. Living in the 21st century, we're on the other side of the world, pretty much literally, and the little beams of light are connecting us through the tubes under the ocean. Making this, I think that's how it works. I'm not. I guess I'm not too sure about that.
We got some big internet cables that go across the ocean floor.
Oh yeah, I could see when those were first getting built. You guys down there were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna give us the biggest ones you got. We're gonna need these." So.
Well, they've been rolling out fiber broadband into houses, so we've got the kind of residential internet connectivity that businesses used to dream about 5 years ago.
Yeah, so I'm not sure we should get into that because I'm going to get really sad about the situation here in the States. But, well, yeah, thank you for coming on. Thanks for your enthusiasm and your comments over the years, and definitely keep it up. Where can folks get in touch with you? You said you have a Twitter account. What's your handle? Yep. Is that your preferred place where you hang out?
I've got a blog where I just kind of write whatever I've done for the week, usually mix of games and units that I'm painting, and that's a bit all over the place. And then I post out Twitter as well, and I think we follow each other on Twitter. You and Monte and I, and we all, just a way to stay connected. I kind of wrote this article, I kind of wrote an article for this to help me get all my thoughts in order for this chat session on my blog. That's got photos of the units I was going to bring, so you can actually see the models. If anybody wants to go and have a look, Rodge should be copied in on that, so we would have the link.
Yep,
so maybe you can attach that to the bottom of the video.
I will do that.
That'd be awesome. So yeah, thanks from down under.
Yeah,
and
it'll be a nice supplement. So if you want to go back to it at some point, you won't have to necessarily listen to us ramble for 60 or 70 minutes or whatever this ends up being. You can just get the highlights from his blog there. So thank you for that. For those watching, do you have any comments? Did we get anything wrong? Did I mispronounce anything? I'm curious about that. So do you think we kind of talked? We didn't think that the undead were necessarily overpowered, but for other folks out there, have they had experiences? Do you think they're overpowered? Comment below. If you play these guys, what sort of army lists are you taking? So this is just, and I think with Age of Magic, definitely, you're just taking one, what you like to bring. Then that's not necessarily the one right thing that you need to do. Where I think in historical, sometimes there is like a one right list that you should be taking, but I think in Age of Magic there's a lot more leeway with spells, with the different units. There's a lot more individual preference, I think, that can come into play. So if you are one of those folks, let us know what you're playing. But otherwise, I think that's it, John. Hopefully 2021 Adepticon, maybe, I don't know if it's next year, but at some point I would like to see you. Shake hands, trade bacteria with you in a safe, controlled manner.
Maybe some of these Instagram influencers and fashionistas will all be have their new branded biohazard suits, Dolce and Gabbana face masks, and this kind of thing.
This is just the beginning. Yeah, we'll just be encased in rubber from here on out. Maybe, I don't know.
And not even on a Friday night.
Nope. Nice. I think that's a good place to call it here, buddy. So thanks again. Thanks everyone.
We'll
see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rodge. Cheers. Bye.
Saga.